Welcome back, everybody, to our Offseason Blueprints series, where today, if you are a fan of an AFC East team, we will be fixing your team, doing the Dolphins, Jets, Patriots, and Bills in that order. We're going to get right into it. If you are watching this on YouTube, please do hit that like button. Make sure you subscribe down below so you don't miss the rest of this series that will be over the next couple of days, wrapping up every single team. And if you're listening to the audio version of this via the Fully Inflated Football podcast, if you have a second to leave a review, I do appreciate you for that. All right, let's get started with the Miami Dolphins, who have a very simple goal this offseason. Fix the offensive line and give Tua a fighting chance so you can get a real evaluation and eventually come to the conclusion that he's not the guy, which I think is eventually where they're going to get to, but you at least need to see it through with Tua, and that means giving him a actual non-all-time terrible offensive line, which is what he's had since he got there. And they have room to do it. They have $49 million in cap space, which is third most in the NFL, and they have probably the shortest list of impending free agents of any team that we've done so far. It's really just Will Fuller, who you're letting go. You know, his skill set never really was a match with Tua. I thought that was a weird signing from the get-go, and injury concerns with Will Fuller, and Emmanuel Ogbah. They have some other wide receiver, corner, running back depth pieces, but no one that's really even worth mentioning here. You're just letting everybody go that is an impending free agent. Fuller and Ogbah are the only guys even worth mentioning, honestly, in my opinion. So you're letting Fuller go, and then I do want to re-sign Emmanuel Ogbah. So they obviously fired Brian Flores here, and I have my disagreements with them doing that, but they are sticking with that scheme. They don't want to change too much on defense because defense hasn't been the problem in Miami. So they're keeping Josh Boyer around. We'll see what kind of job he can do if he brings the same energy and schematics that Flores was so good with here. But schematically speaking, I think getting Emmanuel Ogbah back here is really a no-brainer. I think he's worth more to you if you're Miami than he is to other teams because of the scheme fit, because of the production he's had on this defense. He was really, is it fair to say he was their best defensive player last year? I mean, Xavier Howard wasn't bad, but I think Emmanuel Ogbah was more impactful to that defense. Holland, my dude Javon Holland was awesome. But yeah, Emmanuel Ogbah is one of your three best defensive players. I don't think you want to lose him, especially when you can afford him. He's not going to cost you a fortune. I project about 3 years, $54 million. This is a deal that I'd like to get done if you're Miami, so that you really feel pretty good about your defense heading into the offseason. You can really focus on the O-line there. So I would pay Emmanuel Ogbah. Maybe he's going to try and hit the market and run up his contract, which I'd understand, but I do think he's back in Miami either way. So that would be my focus before free agency starts here in about a week. I will remind you guys, I will be live on, I think, Tuesday and Wednesday for all of the live free agency reactions, so mark your calendars. You can look forward to that. But we are heading into free agency now with, I would say, one glaring need and two other things that are like you could improve it if you found room to do it. So the entire offensive line outside of Robert Hunt needs to be upgraded. And I look at Liam Eichenberg, probably can start somewhere at guard or tackle. Austin Jackson, you hope can take that next step next year. But if you can upgrade from him, why not? Because counting on him to take that next step next year, it's just not worth taking that risk when this is such a critical year for Tua, his development, and your ability to identify if he's going to be your quarterback moving forward. So I'm not going to let Austin Jackson get in the way of that. He'll be on the team. He'll compete for a spot. But really outside of Robert Hunt at right guard, who I feel very, very good about, and Liam Eichenberg playing in one of those spots, whether it's at either guard or either tackle, that's three spots you need to improve. You got Michael Dieter at center. Just, again, similar to Austin Jackson, he'll be on the team. He'll compete for a spot, but you're not counting on him to give you a good center next year. You have, the right tackle. Do they even have? I guess Jesse Davis is technically still on the team, but again, these guys stink. I can smell how bad they are all the way up in Minnesota. Like, it is a horrid offensive line. They need to call the agent of every single free agent offensive lineman and do what you can to improve here. You start at the top with Brandon Sheriff, Teron Armstead, Ryan Jensen. If and when you strike out on them, you keep going down the list. Connor Williams, James Daniels from the Bears. You keep going, you keep going, you keep going until they're all gone or until your holes are filled. That is the most important thing for the Miami Dolphins this entire summer, is hitting offensive linemen in free agency. Period. Nothing else matters. Period. Now, they still have a lot of cap space. They can, as a little side pet project, improve some of these other spots as well. I think getting a running back here, now that you're bringing Mike McDaniel over, where they're going to really try to improve that run game. He's the run game coordinator for the Niners. Shanahan, for as big of a genius as his scheme has been for the passing game around the league, at the heart, it's wide zone running. And it's having a really athletic running back that can hit home runs and get the corner on those stretch runs. You know, they kind of have that in Savon Ahmed, but God, that's a really low-level scheme fit there. I would maybe see if you can get Cordarrelle Patterson or Leonard Fournette in here in Miami to upgrade the run game, which will ultimately help Tua. You're not spending a fortune on Patterson or Fournette, but it might be worth a phone call. And then linebackers also a pretty big need for this team. They do have Jerome Baker there, but they don't have that kind of thumping guy in the middle of the defense. And there's some options in free agency for them there. Rashaan Evans potentially could be a really good scheme fit, would play off of Jerome Baker really well. Anthony Walker from Indianapolis and Cleveland last year. And then is this a spot Bobby Wagner would be interested in? That wouldn't surprise me. You come and get a face of your defense, a captain to kind of bring in and get everyone in the right place. They can afford him. They can pay him handsomely to come down and finish his career in Miami for what should be a pretty good defense. Could be a pretty attractive spot for Bobby Wagner, who just became a free agent. So there's your free agency. It's all about the O-line and then maybe find some value at running back and linebacker. As for the draft, same deal. It really starts with offensive line. I don't think they fill the entire thing in free agency. And if they do, this would change what I'm about to say, but I still think end of the first round, second, third round, you're still really focusing on O-linemen. So at the end of the first, there's like 5 players that I think you would take. There's 3 interior offensive linemen that may be there. That's Zion Johnson, who I love, out of Boston College. Tyler Linderbaum, who just might fall further than people realize. It happened with Creed Humphrey last year. The NFL just doesn't really value the center position, and he's undersized. I think he'll probably be gone, but if he's there, you run that card up to the podium because of the scheme fit. Linderbaum is the ideal, like, stretch run reach blocking center. He is almost like a reincarnation of Jason Kelce. So Linderbaum would be great. Kenyon Green would be great out of Texas A&M. Really physical, athletic run blocker. So any of those would be good. Or if you're looking at offensive tackle, it's the top 3 guys are going to be gone. I feel incredibly confident about that. They're not getting Cross, Ekwonu, or Neal. Trevor Penning and Bernard Raymond are 2 guys that would be scheme fits because they're both really good athletes. They can get out on the move and improve your run blocking there at left tackle or right tackle. And you hope they come along pretty quickly with pass protection. They have some upside. It wouldn't be the worst pick in the world. It's just a little bit, I think Penning, if he's there, that's a pretty easy pick for you. Raymond, I do have a lot of concerns about his pass pro, but I think he'd still be the best pick if the other 4 guys are gone there. And then you still got to continue thinking about O-line second, third round. So just 5 more names to keep an eye on for the Dolphins would be Max Mitchell out of UL Lafayette, another athletic, good run blocking tackle. Luke Goddick, who might be a guard at the next level, but is just a fun offensive tackle out of Central Michigan. And then some more kind of move blocking interior guys similar to Tyler Linderbaum that aren't as good. Alec Lindstrom, Dylan Parham, really fun prospects there that should be there second, third round for the Dolphins. And then Cole Strange, a fast rising name. I walked out of the Senior Bowl and no one was really talking about him. And I was like, that guy really stood out as an offensive lineman. Just decent athlete, tough dude, good technique, a lot of pop in his hands to stunt rushers and create some push off the ball in the run game. And I threw like a 3rd to a 4th round grade on him initially. And it's a true 3rd round grade now. But now I've seen him being discussed as a 2nd or a 3rd round pick. So that hype after everyone kind of reviewed the Senior Bowl is definitely building on a Cole Strange. So that's another name out of Chattanooga to keep an eye on. And that's really it for the Miami Dolphins, man. It's a very simple process. It is fix the offensive line, look at a linebacker, look at a running back, and we'll see what Tua can do next year with Mike McDaniel and a Shanahan offense. Let's move on to the New York Jets, who have a pretty blank slate with their offseason. They've got $44 million in cap space. They have 2 first-round picks, and they have a pretty long list of free agents coming up here. So you've got 3 wide receivers hitting the market: Jamison Crowder, Braxton Berrios, 2 kind of slot types, Keelan Cole. So you have a receiver room to replenish. Tyler Kroft, starting tight end for them. A couple of guards that aren't true starters, but are pieces that played a role for them: Alex Lewis and Laurent Duvernay-Tardif. Right tackle Morgan Moses started pretty much every game, if not every game, for them last year. I know he had over 1,000 snaps. And then on the defense, Gerard Davis, a signing that just didn't work out. I'm pretty sure he couldn't stay healthy. And then defensive tackle Falorenzo Fadukasi, who's one of my personal favorites. 3rd round pick from several years ago, Nathan Shepard, who rotates in and out of that line. And free safety Marcus May is another pretty big name that looks like he's going to hit the market. They have not worked out a deal yet. It seems like relationships there have flamed out. So the players I would re-sign from that list include Braxton Berrios. I think he provides value as a return man. I think you are really excited about Elijah Moore, but bringing back Braxton Berrios, say that 5 times fast, just provides more flexibility and depth there. I mentioned the special teams. Elijah Moore can play on the outside. Absolutely. He's not a true slot guy, so you can have Berrios and Elijah Moore on the field at the same time, just as they had last year. I just think he's a valuable piece for them. He's not going to cost you a fortune. I think about 2 years, $13 million is about what it costs you to get Braxton Berrios. And you really want to make sure Zach Wilson has everything he needs next year. I would also re-sign Morgan Moses. This is similar to what I said about the Denver Broncos re-signing Bobby Massey at right tackle. It doesn't mean that you have to make him your future right tackle. He's 31 years old. This is a guy that's played like 1 million games in the NFL. Let's just pull up Morgan Moses' page here for a second, because it feels like Morgan Moses has been in the league, but I think he still has a lot of good football left in him, because he was in Washington for a long time. He was brought in 2014, and he's been starting pretty much nonstop since 2015. He's got over 900 snaps in every year since 2015, and he had 858 snaps in 2019. He's never graded as a below average offensive lineman. His last 2 years have been some of his best, according to PFF. So I know he's not an ideal right tackle, but why create question marks there? Now they do have, there's what's his name? George Fant played okay at tackle. But look, Mekhi Becton is a huge injury question mark for me right now. You obviously hope he can stay healthy, but there's reports that he's out of shape. There's reports that his body just can't hold up. I really am planning on him to be back, but I'm treating Fant as a flex piece. Morgan Moses, I think, is going to be a very valuable player for you to have, and basically shore up your offensive line. Again, you don't want to be an issue. There's no guaranteed upgrades in free agency. I don't see this being a big landing spot for like Teron Armstead. So even with Fant there, with Becton there, I would re-sign Morgan Moses. He's not going to be free. I think he costs you somewhere north of 2 years, $20 million. But I do think that would be smart for the Jets to lock those 2 guys up on offense. And then the only other guy from that list I'm really trying to pursue before free agency starts is Lorenzo Fatukasi. This guy's a monster of a run defender. He's actually very similar to Travis Jones coming out of UConn this year that's getting first round buzz. Fatukasi preceded Travis Jones at UConn, but he's got pop in his hands. He can rush the passer a little bit, but I just don't want to lose him. I think he's a great piece with that rotation. You still have Sheldon Rankins. You have obviously Quinnen Williams. You have those pieces on the edge. You might draft another edge this year. So I think getting that D-line to be a true strength, a rotation that can keep these guys fresh is just very valuable for the Jets. And their depth just stinks as well. So I would really want to get Fatukasi back. I think he'd be a desirable target for a lot of people out there. But they just might get outpriced because they're not desperate at defensive tackle, whereas some other teams might be. But I do think he costs you north of $10 million. I think if you could get him for 3 years, 37 mil, that's about the price range I'd be comfortable with Fatukasi. And then you have Marcus May. Like I said, I feel like those relationships have just kind of flamed out with Marcus May, which creates a huge hole at safety, but I don't think you're getting him back in a re-signing situation. So the 3 guys I'm re-signing before free agency are Braxton Berrios, Morgan Moses, and Lorenzo Fatukasi. So our remaining needs are going to be tight end, with Tyler Kroft leaving and no real options on that team, cornerback, safety, with Marcus May leaving, and potentially right guard, somewhere you could upgrade. I think George Fant could play there. You also have Chuma Edoga. Like, it's not a huge need, but if you could get a stud there, like a name that I'm going to mention, I think why not? Have a really good offensive line here for Zach Wilson. So I think at tight end, there's a couple names that fit the scheme well that would be interesting playmakers to bring in here that wouldn't cost you a fortune. Robert Tonyan could be someone you look at from Green Bay. You could pretty easily price Green Bay out. The tight end market's potentially going to get a little crazy. He's a guy that knows this system. He played for LaFleur's brother in Green Bay. It is the same kind of Shanahan influence. So that could be an option for you. Although I don't know how good Robert Tonyan would be without Aaron Rodgers there, I still think he can create some separation over the middle of the field if you put a good blocker next to Tonyan. O.J. Howard, give him an opportunity as a real starter, getting freed from behind those guys in Tampa Bay and a system that can utilize his speed a little bit more. And Gerald Everett, who didn't really work out in Seattle, but had a lot of success for the Rams running a comparable system with the wide zone blocking and the crossing routes and stuff. So those are 3 names that I think would make sense for the Jets to get another pass catcher in there at tight end. It's also a really good draft class at tight end. So we'll talk about the draft, but I think day 2, day 3 would be a really good spot for the Jets to take a tight end. And then at cornerback, you have a pretty glaring need. You have Hall as your starter. Good player. I like Bryce Hall. And then you have Javelin Guidry in the slot, who I like. And then you have what's his name? I got to pull up the depth chart because I forgot his name. Out of Kentucky. Echols, is it? It's Echols. I don't need this. Brandon Echols, super fast dude, but like no idea what he's doing out there. Had some plays at the back end of the season. I still like his project upside, but I cannot, in good conscience, put Brandon Echols out there as my number 2 corner. So you got to do something there, whether it's in the draft with like a Stingley or something early or in free agency. You have all this money. I think this would be a great spot for one of these top market corners. Guys like J.C. Jackson, Carlton Davis, or even like a lower level starter than that, Darius Williams, Shavarius Ward, Sidney Jones. I think this is a very likely destination for a starting caliber corner to end up, to round out that defense. And then safety is another, same thing with corner with safety. Like, spend money in the secondary because this Jets secondary is terrible. You have some interesting pieces, but you need to not have a bunch of like crap out there next year that's trying to develop. So does getting a mentor type like Devin McCourty make sense if you're the Jets? Do you spend big on a Marcus Williams, a Justin Reed, a Tyrann Mathieu? All could be good scheme fits. Do you go more second level guys like Tracy Walker, Anthony Harris? This is a very deep free agency class at safety. So that's really where I'm spending most of my money, is safety and corner. There is one other free agent that I'm really targeting here, and that's Brandon Sheriff. If you can attract Brandon Sheriff to come up here and be your right guard, I would do it in a heartbeat. Just because then all of a sudden that offensive line looks really good. If you got Becton healthy, which is something you hope can happen, but Elijah Vera Tucker, you've got McGovern at center, who did impress me as a run blocker last year, Brandon Sheriff next to him, and then Morgan Moses with George Fant as your swingman that can really play anywhere other than center. That would be really good. I think even with a guy like Laken Tomlinson, Austin Corbett, James Daniels, I would try and get them. You might get outpriced pretty quickly. I wouldn't spend a fortune on them, but if you can get a starting caliber right guard to shore up your offensive line, I would do it. So those are some of my free agent targets here as we head in towards free agency. But they're going to have options in the draft to improve at a lot of spots that we just mentioned as well. Now, I do think with that number 4 pick, the two most likely selections are going to be Kayvon Thibodeau or Kyle Hamilton. I wouldn't be stunned if they took Ikem Ekwonu to be in security at tackle, or a right tackle if they don't re-sign Morgan Moses, or to be a right guard. I think Ikem Ekwonu could definitely be in play as well. But I think Kayvon Thibodeau is very likely to give them a potential alpha edge rusher. And Kyle Hamilton is very likely. We mentioned that need at safety. They could very well fill that strong safety spot with Kyle Hamilton. So those are kind of the 3 names I would say in the first, and hell, they could trade up and try to get 2 of those guys or something like that. But those are 3 players that really fit. Obviously, Aiden Hutchinson would be awesome as well, but I don't think he's going to be available for them. The other piece is cornerback. I would love for them to take a guy like Sauce Gardner or Derek Stingley with their pick they got from Seattle. We'll see if they value it enough to take that there. Salah comes from this coaching tree that has always kind of preached don't overinvest in cornerback. So I think that's kind of deep-rooted in his philosophy, but I really don't think it would be. I think it would be smart for them to spend one of those top 10 picks on a corner, even if it's not a part of their philosophy. So I think that's worth mentioning. But I do think in the second, third round, you're targeting corner, you're targeting tight end, you're probably targeting receiver somewhere in there, and I think offensive line you're targeting. So those are kind of the, and safety, of course, if they don't go Hamilton in the first. But the strengths of this draft class play into what the Jets need pretty well. I think wide receiver, corner, edge. There's some pieces on the O-line that you can find. I think the Jets have it in front of them to really put together the right roster and hit the ground running next year. I think if they follow this format, I don't know. The AFC is tough, but I think the Jets can be a team that's much improved next year. All right, then we got the New England Patriots. And once I started going through this, they have a lot more work to do than I realized. So they only have $11 million in cap space, which is not much. They spent a lot of money last year. They have a pretty serious list of free agents and a lot of needs. So their impending free agents are Trent Brown, James White, Ted Karras on the offense. And then linebacker, they're losing like all these guys. Donta Hightower, Kyle Van Noy, Jawan Bentley, not listed here. I'm pretty sure also Jamie Collins is a free agent. Devin McCourty is up, long-term free safety, and J.C. Jackson appears to be gone. So that's a pretty massive list of like starting caliber players. You're looking at, 5 or 6 starters there at least that need to be replaced with $11 million in cap space. That's not easy to do. So as far as who I'd re-sign from this list, obviously I would love to re-sign J.C. Jackson, but that seems to be something that's not going to happen. I can't explain it. I think it's wrong. I don't know why they didn't pay him last year. I don't know why they didn't franchise tag him. I don't know what Bill Belichick has against J.C. Jackson, but he's out of there. That's really what it's looking like right now. I think it's a mistake. I think J.C. Jackson's a total stud. I think he's a top 10 corner in the NFL. So let him out the building when that is a need for you. It hurts, but it looks like that's going to happen. So after that, honestly, I'm not re-signing any of these guys, not at least at market value. There's 3 guys that I would let hit the market, and maybe on the second wave of free agency, you get under market value. That's James White, Kyle Van Noy, and Devin McCourty, guys that are just like, I feel like cornerstones of this team. Even if Kyle Van Noy's been in and out of the team, these guys know defense. White obviously is a big receiving threat out of the backfield, so they're valuable players to them. If you can get them back for cheap, I would, but I'm not paying them top dollar when you have all these needs. So you're probably looking to try and get pretty active in free agency again. The remaining needs at this point are right tackle or guard if you're deciding to move Michael Onwenu full-time to tackle. Wide receiver is still a need for you. You need kind of a true number 1 here. Linebacker in general, whether it's edge or middle linebacker, still a need. Especially the middle linebacker part of that. I like some of the guys they've drafted, guys like Ronnie Perkins, Uche, Winovich to potentially fill in at that outside backer spot for them. Cornerback, glaring need. They don't have a ton of good depth here at corner. And then safety, free safety specifically, is a need. They're good at the strong safety spot. They got Duggar, they got Adrian Phillips, but they run a lot of free safety stuff. And I don't love either of those guys as true free safety types. I think Duggar could do it, but he's better down in the box. I'd rather get you a true free safety so you don't have to do that to Kyle Duggar. So I would start at wide receiver there. I think they're a very likely landing spot for a guy like Allen Robinson or Amari Cooper. I think they really want to get a veteran receiver in here because they just can't draft that position. It's like, all these other needs, tackle, linebacker, corner, safety, those feels like spots that Bill Belichick's going to be able to find people in the draft, right? That's kind of like, those are all kind of like his money positions. Wide receiver couldn't be any further from the truth. That's like maybe Bill Belichick's biggest flaw as a head coach in his career is the ability to draft wide receivers. So for them, I think they say, we got to get one of these guys. Allen Robinson, Amari Cooper, Juju, all would be good options. Maybe you're looking at a Michael Gallup or something like that. But I really think Allen Robinson and Amari Cooper, there's going to be some attraction there. I don't know if Cooper and Mac Jones have a relationship with the Alabama there. Saban guys, obviously, Belichick, there's a lot of ties there. So I think Amari Cooper and Allen Robinson are kind of your first ticket free agents there. Then you're kind of looking for value elsewhere. I think at right tackle, you could definitely get one of these bigger bodied mauling types. I think Trent Brown's injury stuff kind of makes you want to move on from him, but he could be brought back here if he is cheap. But the Patriots love their big offensive tackles, so they're going to be able to put a value on a guy like Morgan Moses if he did hit the market, Brandon Shell from Seattle, Cornelius Lucas out of Washington, or hell, could we see Nate Solder return to New England? Maybe not an ideal situation, but it gives you somebody. And we've seen tons of guys come back home and play better football, so maybe that could happen with Nate Solder. Then I look at cornerback. I think the one guy you would maybe pay a lot of money to would be Carlton Davis. That would probably be if you strike out on one of those big wide receivers. Other than that, you're looking at kind of your C-level corners, someone that you can hopefully bring in that can run man coverage and start for you. So that's Charvarius Ward, Akella Witherspoon, Sidney Jones, Eli Apple, maybe a Patrick Peterson, someone that you can pay cheap because they're not going to be swimming in cap space here. Same thing really goes at linebacker with some cheaper options, maybe being Rashaan Evans. We'll see what Leighton Vander Esch ends up getting with his kind of injury concerns. I wouldn't be stunned if Leighton Vander Esch gets a little bit less than anticipated and isn't like a first free agent off the block. Anthony Barr would be really fascinating as well in New England because he has those pass rushing backgrounds. You could maybe bring him in to play that Kyle Van Noy role, would be really fascinating. So I think you can find some value at linebacker. And then safety, maybe a guy like Quandre Diggs or Anthony Harris could be available. But, you can't sign all these guys. You're probably just going to have to kick a couple of these needs into the draft. So I would say first round, wide receiver, corner, or safety. Kind of whatever you don't get in free agency, you look in the first round. I think this team has already decided they're drafting Wisconsin linebacker Leo Chenal in the second round. He's that hybrid type. He's an ultra athletic guy. These Wisconsin linebackers have had a lot of success coming into the NFL and playing that hybrid edge piece. Guys like Vince Beagle for Miami, Andrew Van Ginkel. Leo Chenal has a little bit of that background where he can blitz and he can be your Mike linebacker. And I think my prediction is Leo Chenal to the Patriots in the second round. But yeah, there's your Patriots offseason. A lot of work to do. It's pretty complicated, right? But I think it starts in free agency, obviously, and they're going to have to fill some needs in the draft. And now we have the Buffalo Bills to wrap this thing up. They're a lot more straightforward. They have a long list of free agents, but none of them are really like tragic losses. So you've got Mitch Trubisky, Emmanuel Sanders, Isaiah McKenzie, John Feliciano, Ike Butker, Vernon Butler, Harrison Phillips, Jerry Hughes, Mario Addison, Levi Wallace, and F.A. Obata. All these guys play. They're all valuable depth, but it's no one that you're like, oh crap, we're losing them. We got to rush and get them back. So they have $2.5 million in cap space. They're not swimming in room here. They can move some money around and make some plays where they need to, but the one guy I'm kind of targeting to re-sign here is Harrison Phillips. Interior defensive line is just a very difficult position to draft. I think Harrison Phillips played pretty well last year as a run defender up front. Good compliment to a guy like Ed Oliver. So I would pay Harrison Phillips. I would bring him back about 2 years, $15 million. And then you're pretty cap strung, right? So unless you're moving money around and kicking the can into the future, which I don't think you need to do if you're Buffalo, you're in a pretty good position to compete right now without going all in for this season. Josh Allen's only like 26 years old. The AFC is stacked right now. Russell Wilson just entered the picture. Like, you have a very good probability of winning, but you don't need to really hurt the 2024 Bills or the 2025 Bills by paying to open up a bunch of cap space with the void years, because your roster's in pretty good shape. So I don't think free agency is going to be much of a... There's not going to be a lot of activity in free agency for the Bills with that little amount of cap space. I do think they kind of sit and see what happens with Levi Wallace and Isaiah McKenzie. McKenzie is someone that they were really able to get creative with. Now, Dable's gone. So do you count on the next guy being able to do that? I don't know, but he was a separator type. He was a gimmick playmaker for them. If you can get him on the second wave of free agency for like a 1 year, $4 million deal, or 2 years, $7, something like that, I would bring Isaiah McKenzie back. And Levi Wallace, he's started a lot of games for you. He's not great. He's not bad. And if someone pays him a bunch of money and outprices you, congratulations, Levi Wallace. We'll happily take our comp pick and look to the draft to replace him at corner. But I do think they like Levi Wallace. So if you know, he clears the first wave and you can get him back for 2 years, 15 mil or something like that, I think you do that if you're the Bills. But starting cornerbacks they don't come cheap. So I think Wallace tests the market, and if he's not super expensive, I think they could bring him back as well. So you basically head into the draft and a little bit of free agency with your remaining needs, a still interior defensive line just to have like rotation and potentially a better starter there other than Harrison Phillips. I think edge depth is a need. I think they like the edge players they have, but it's still somewhere you can upgrade. And then, of course, corner, depending what happens with Levi Wallace. So the only true free agents I'm looking at is if Levi Wallace goes, you do have this glaring need at corner. So I'm just kind of keeping my eye open. Casey Hayward, Rasul Douglas, Sidney Jones, Kyle Fuller, Levi Wallace. I think you need to find someone on the cheap to bring in here, just so as a Band-Aid, so that you don't go into the year with like, you know, horrible starting corner play. I like the Pittsburgh kid, but he's not ready to be a starter going into the year. So yeah, you find value at your number 2 corner spot opposite of Trey White. So then we head into the draft, and I think round 1, you're really going best player available at 3 position groups of need, being interior defensive line. So is that one of the Georgia guys, or even a Travis Jones out of UConn? I wouldn't be stunned. He seems like, he's from that area. He seems like someone the Bills could be very interested in. I think cornerback, if one of the Washington kids is there, or a Andrew Booth, maybe Kyer Elam, something like that, could be the pick. Or edge. I think Jermaine Johnson, Trayvon Walker, I doubt he's there, but George Karlaftis. They drafted the 2 guys last year, though. They drafted Boogie Basham. They drafted Gregory Rousseau. They're hoping those guys can really step up next year. Another name I didn't mention is that Shaq Lawson really expressed interest in coming back to Buffalo. I think you could get him in there as a 3rd edge, as a veteran. Seems like a no-brainer. It makes a lot of sense. So I think he'll be back in Buffalo for really cheap, like 1 year league minimum type of deal. But yeah, round 1, I think corner, interior defensive line, edge, you carry those needs into the 2nd and 3rd rounds. One position I really think the Bills are going to draft that Bills fans might not be crazy about, and that's safety. The Bills have shown year after year that they're very forward thinking. They like to plan ahead for players that might be leaving. They did it with edge last year, for example. I think they look at Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer. They love them. As long as they're playing in their prime like they are right now, they're going nowhere, but they're both over the other side of 30. And there's some good value at safety in like the 2nd round. So guys like Jaquan Brisker, Jalen Petrie, Lewis Seen. I wouldn't be stunned if they took one of those guys in the 2nd round just to kind of be someone that will play as a 3rd safety in dime packages, but also a longer term replacement for those 2 aging safeties who both had like all pro caliber seasons. So you're not rushing to replace them, but that has been the Bills' philosophy, is planning ahead a little bit instead of drafting for more immediate need. But yeah, and the only other thing, I think like round 3 or 4, I would be looking for another receiver. You have Gabriel Davis, you have Stephon Diggs. Cole Beasley's probably going to get cut, by the way. I didn't mention him, but he's probably going to be on the way out as well. So I do think you need to replenish that wide receiver room. It's not a dire need, but 2nd, 3rd, 4th round, you're probably also looking at receivers. It's a very deep class, long list of names you could be looking at there. But yeah, there is fixing the AFC East. I really hope you guys enjoyed. We will have the NFC South tomorrow. That's going to be an interesting one with Tampa, New Orleans, Panthers, Falcons. God, there's a lot of narratives to discuss in that one. So that'll be a good one. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss that one tomorrow. And we'll see you then. Peace out, everyone.